Hi and welcome back. So let's jump straight into the first principle. We looked at the example before this session of this idea of priming. So let's take that example before and start to set a contrast and go more in depth about what we're talking about with priming. So we looked at the idea of a client sitting down watching a horror movie before they come to see us or before they come in for a session. And we've unconsciously set a priming environment for what the session could be about, and it's actually setting the direction of where a session could go. So this unconscious environment is something we want to set first or prime first, but instead of priming it for what happened inside the horror movie, let's prime it for success. Let's prime it for learning, let's prime it for safety, and let's prime it for everything a session would need in order to have a client overcome smoking. Now let's add one more thing to this. Not only have a client overcome smoking, but have a client overcome smoking quickly. Because that's what this class is about. That's what the training is about. Is how a client can do this extremely quickly without having to see us 5, 6, up to 10 times, up to a dozen times I've seen in some cases. Want to get this done in 1 to 2 sessions. Now, are you always going to have a client overcome smoking in 1 to 2 sessions? Of course not. So we want to stack the deck in our favor. It's not to say that sometimes clients may have numerous attempts to do this, but there's something interesting we can do with this. If you find your sessions having to rerun themselves over 3 to 4 sessions, we can start to add in other categories of their life that would help improve not only the smoking, but improve their life in general. And we'll look at that contrast frame towards the end of our training together. But let's take little baby steps for now. So this priming idea, we're setting an unconscious environment for success. So what I'd like to do now is just look at a small list that I've put together for myself and something I always make sure I cover with every session. So you might be familiar with this idea of what is called a pre-talk. Now, a pre-talk is a hypnotherapy tool that would be used before we work with a client to give them an idea of not only what the session's about, but maybe start to give them some ideas if they're extremely new to hypnosis. Now, again, I don't want to knock this as an approach, but I want to look at how we can create your pre-talk and priming and make it one little chat with your client. So the pre-talk will usually cover things like what will happen during the session, what a client should feel or will feel, the outcome of the session, what a client will need to do during the session, what hypnosis is, what hypnosis isn't, and all that good stuff. So I don't want to take that out of the equation, but I want to point out a couple little things that actually happen inside this pre-talk that can actually work against you and not for you. Now, over the decade that I've been, or up to 14 years that I've been a hypnotherapist working with clients exclusively, I was never introduced to this pre-talk until I came across it a couple of years later and realized that I'd been doing successful sessions without it. So I want to point out that the pre-talk isn't always necessary. It can be used, and it's a great way to start a session, and sometimes clients need that. But I want to take out, again, this idea that you must do something. You must follow something step by step by step to get an outcome, because it just isn't the case. Every client's going to be different. Every session's going to be different. You might even find yourself in a different environment other than your office doing a session and realize you don't even need a hypnotherapy office to be a hypnotherapist. So what is the pre-talk about? How can we use this pre-talk idea, but direct it in a way that's going to help us and serve us rather than go up against us? So the first idea I want to look at this pre-talk is this idea of telling clients what hypnosis is and what hypnosis isn't. Now, anytime we're giving client information, what are we doing? We are priming them to this unconscious environment. Now, by telling a client what hypnosis is and isn't, I want you to really consider, does it really do anything for your session? Does it add to your success, or does it detract from it? Does it warn your clients about certain things that are possible? And does it prime your client, even though you say hypnosis is not about me finding out your deepest, darkest secrets? I won't be getting your credit card details off you. I won't be making you cluck like a chicken, which is the normal things hypnotherapists will say, maybe to create a little bit of rapport. But what have we done right there? Although we're saying it won't, or it will not, or I won't be, it's still priming them that there could be a possibility. Maybe a client will sit there and go, oh, that's very nice of them. They're not going to get my deepest, darkest secrets from me. They're not going to rip me off. They're not going to take advantage of the situation. But does that mean they can? Maybe this person has done it before. Maybe the therapist has the skills to be able to do this. I better be on alert and make sure I don't go too far into hypnosis just in case they try this funny business on me. So this is a possibility. So by telling a client what hypnosis is and isn't is really detracting your success rather than adding anything to it. And right now we want to add things to your sessions and take out the things that aren't quite working for us. So what can we do with this pre-talk now that we can take away this hypnosis is and isn't, still use the same idea, but add things in it that would be more exclusive to helping the session rather than detracting? So let's look at this. I want to give you a little quick speech, and then I'm going to break it down into the steps that I've used so we can look at it a bit more formally. And again, it'd be a perfect opportunity for write these things down. Now, being a conversational hypnotherapist, I don't use scripts, and it's totally what you do with what works with your sessions and how you treat this. But what I want to do for you as well is start to tend to direct you away from this idea of scripting things, because we want this stuff to be natural, because it's actually going to prime something that's going to help in our favor if it's natural, rather than something that's generic that you've pre-written before. So let's look at something I do. If you can imagine, if you will, I've got my client sitting in my office. They're coming in for me for a stop smoking session. The first thing I want to do, or the second thing I want to do, we'll look at the questioning phase a little bit more later on how we can use questions to our advantage. It's part of the priming sequence as well. Is I'm going to say something like this, and I'll just give you off the top version of this, knowing that you can do this in any amount of ways. The things I'm talking about aren't necessarily really important. It's the principle, it's the priming, it's the environment that I'm setting up for the client and myself. So it sounds something like this. Okay, Joe Blog, so we're going to be going through a stop smoking session today. I want you to realize that stop smoking sessions are easy. And the best thing of all is you as the client, you don't have to do a single thing, is just sit there, enjoy the trance experience, and know that you're going to quit smoking by the end of our interaction today. And I want you to also notice that trance is not only relaxing, but it has a world of therapeutic outcomes you can get, even beyond just the smoking. So I want you to realize all you need to do today is just enjoy this learning experience, because today's about you. Today's about you overcoming something in your life that has maybe been restricting you to the person you want to be, and give you more freedom beyond just the cigarettes. So you can get more stuff done in your life. So while throughout our session today, I want you to think about, what do you get from stop smoking? What do you get from having the freedom of not being in control, or having a cigarette in control of you as a person? What do you get more of in life? Think about that. Think of all the positive things you'll get from today by overcoming smoking. And the best thing of all is it's so simple to overcome smoking. We're going to have a lot of fun together, and you're going to learn a great variety of things about yourself that's not only going to improve yourself as a person, but you're going to be witness to the unlimited power of your unconscious mind. I want you to realize that your unconscious mind will do all this for you naturally. So let's pause it right there. Now what I suggest you do is listen back to that little pre-talk, if you will. So what is my pre-talk talking about? It's talking about learning. It's talking about success. You even hear me say that you'll overcome it in one session. You'll hear me say talking about a little bit about the unconscious minds. And I actually talked a little bit about what trance is going to feel like, what it's going to be. Now you notice I didn't tell it what it should be or what it could be or other things like that, or what it is or it isn't. I'm still using that same idea, but you'll notice the direction and the environment that I'm setting is all positive. Now just even listening to that should make you start to feel a little bit happy. You'll probably hear it in my voice. I started to get really involved in that because it's a pleasant thing to hear, and it's a real pleasant thing to tell our clients. So imagine you as a client, your therapist told you that. Instead of telling a client what hypnosis is and what it isn't, and what trance is and where it started and what trance should be, imagine hearing that itself. So that maybe went for 15 or 20 seconds. So imagine doing this for maybe a couple of minutes before your client comes in. What would this do for it? You're sitting down, your client's sitting there, and you go into this little spiel for a couple of minutes about what it is, what's going to happen, what's their expectation. Now the key thing I want to point out is this idea of expectation of the client. Because what tends to happen when a client comes in to see us is they think they need to do something. They think they either need to perform, or they need to prepare themselves mentally before they come in, or they need to do certain things or cover certain criteria to have a successful session. And if you'll notice inside my priming, I just pointed out and said, you don't have to do a thing except enjoy it, learn, This session is about you. This session is about uncovering your unlimited power to be more than the person you are right now and to never be controlled by cigarettes again. And there I go again, off to a little priming, what we could call a priming story or a pre-talk. So imagine repeating these same ideas over and over and over, because repetition is important inside hypnosis. Now, why would I repeat the same idea with different scenarios of what this idea is about? It's because I want the unconscious mind to prime. It's always listening. We need to realize the unconscious mind is always listening. Doesn't mean it's going to get it the first time, but if I keep repeating in that couple of minutes of the pre-talk, learning, safety, having fun, no expectations, overcoming smoking quickly. If I keep repeating that same idea, Joe Bloggs' unconscious mind will finally get the idea and go, got it, excellent. I'm going to hold you to that, which is fine for us as a therapist because we're going to act on our promise later a little bit more fully. But once it's heard it, what's it starting to do? It's starting to prepare the mind for what's about to happen. Let's consider this. A client comes in for the stop smoking session. We spend a little bit of time on the pre-talk. I wonder if there's another place that we could actually put this little priming scenario so we've done it twice. So let's consider this as an idea. Let's imagine your client calls you for the first time and calls up and says, "Hey, Scott, I want to book in for a stop smoking session." And instead of going straight into your price and asking about the problem and all that sort of stuff, which is an important idea, what if you went straight into your little priming pre-talk? He said, "Oh, fantastic. You know what? I've worked with many smokers just like you. And you know what? The best thing about working with smokers, they have so much fun. I actually quit smoking in one session and they learn a great deal about themselves to be a new person without smoking." I mean, what does that sound like to you? So have a listen to that. What have I done at the end that's just a little bit different? I've added what's called a little tag phrase. I've asked them, give them a little bit of a spiel and ask them, "Hey, does that sound like something you want to go through?" Because I want to get a little bit of feedback. I want to take away this idea of talking at my clients and involve them inside the conversation. Now, why is this important? Because let's say I say, you're going to be learning, you're going to be about fun, it's going to be about safety. And I ask, what does that sound like to you? Does it sound like something you want to go through? And they go, "Yeah, but I was really hoping I'd feel really relaxed through the whole thing." Now I find out their criteria of what they want. So I say, "Oh, that is perfect." Because amongst everything we're going to go through, this session is going to be so relaxing that you'll probably want to stay in hypnosis for hours. And the great thing about that is we can not only help you overcome your smoking in today's session, but you get some time for yourself. You get some time to really take some time, put your feet up and relax while overcoming an addiction like smoking. So what have I done right there? I've gone into the second part of my prime, but I've pulled in their criteria of exactly what they want. Because I want to meet all the criteria from my client. I could ask them up front, but then I just want to repeat it back in this priming stage. So when I've done it once on the phone, and then they come in, I get straight into the priming again. What have I done? I've alerted the unconscious mind that I'm holding up my promise. I've said it's going to be fun, it's going to be about learning, it's going to be excitement, and then I'm repeating those ideas back to them again when they come in to see me. So now I've done it twice. And it doesn't sound formatted. The client comes in expecting to be excited because I've primed them beforehand. They're going to be happy. They're going to be thinking, "Oh, thank God I finally get to overcome this issue." And then they hear me say it again. I've just added to my promise. I've really said, "Hey, I'm looking out for you today and I will promise this thing to you so you do get the experience that you want and you get the outcome you're after." So this is the priming stage. And already this is the first setup stage that we do after the questioning stage, which we'll get to later. So the second part, if you will, that's starting to set the right unconscious environment for the right type of session to happen. So let's look at the opposite we've looked at with the pre-talk in regards to setting up the session in the wrong way. The pre-talk, this idea of talking to a client and telling them what hypnosis is and isn't, can work, but we're setting the precedence and we're setting the wrong environment that it will take longer than 1 or 2 sessions. Imagine saying to a client when they call up or they come in, straight off the street or something like that, they're a walk-in, and they go, "Okay, so what's smoking about?" And you say, "Well, smoking is usually I would see a smoker 5 to 6 times. And the things we have to work on are things like boredom. We need to work on finding out why you smoke, which is important, of course. We need to work on your stress. We need to work on social acceptance." And I start to give them a category for everything that I think is causing them to smoke. So what have I primed right then? that it's going to take 5 to 6 sessions. Yes, I've talked about we're going to overcome these things, but now I'm laying down a prime and I'm setting an environment to say to the unconscious mind, hey, we need to take 6 to 10 or 5 to 6 sessions with this. Follow along. So why is this important to point out? Imagine this. Imagine you set up your session so correctly, even if you did it the opposite way of saying it's going to take this many sessions, and you have such a great first session, the unconscious mind picks up the pattern so quickly that it helps the client overcome all those categories. But then it realizes that you said, hey, you said 5 to 6 sessions. So I'm going to keep this client smoking because that's what you promised me. So we can look at this priming as a promise to the unconscious. Doesn't mean it's always going to get it correctly. Remember, we're stacking the deck in our favor. So this is an idea I want you to take away, is instead of telling a client how many sessions it could be, the categories that you must cover, the reasons why people smoke, and all that sort of stuff, it's important, but clients really don't need to hear it. Let's prime them in an opposite way. Let's tell them what the session's going to be about, what they're going to experience, how fun it's going to be, how quickly it is to quit smoking, and how they'll learn something about themselves that's going to help them start to overcome other things in their life. We're setting a direction for absolute success. So this is the priming phase. Now, if you're thinking, well, I don't know exactly when I need to say this stuff, don't worry. We're going to get to that later. I'm going to give you a logical step-by-step system. It's about 6 steps, and I'll tell you exactly where to put this priming process and where to put everything else like the questioning and looking at testing cycles and things like that. Right now, it's the principle. Hopefully, this idea of the principle of setting the foundation, the actual environment for success is abundantly clear. So what I'd like you to do before the next session is create a list. When I first came across this idea of priming, I wrote a list of 5 to 6 things that I knew I wanted to put in every priming scenario that I was working with clients. And this began the setup for absolute success as a smoker. So that's a way we can tweak your pre-talk. We can still add the pre-talk, but we're setting more of an unconscious intention of success rather than telling them what hypnosis is and isn't. So when you're ready, what I'd like to do next is we're going to jump all the way towards the end of this smoking session and look at testing cycles, knowing that on our last session, we'll put it all together in a logical step. I just want to get this foundation out first so I know exactly what to do when it comes to those step-by-step formula. So I hope you enjoyed that part. Have a go at the priming. Even grab a friend or a family member and just give them a little bit of a priming about something they could look forward to, maybe the weekend or a little party that they're going to, and see how well priming works inside a client or people that you're talking to. We're priming for success, happiness, and learning, and not anything else. So let's jump over to the next session and start to look at different ways we can test our clients. We'll see you then.